Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey podcast by the faithful and for the faithful. I'm David Staples of the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Bruce McCurdy. Hey, Bruce.
Hey David, how you doing tonight?
Shell shocked. That was one of
Mhm.
the that was one of the wildest hockey games I've ever seen in my life. I don't think like the intensity of that game, especially the first period and the start of the game, Bruce, and the feeling heading into that game. I mean, I think the 2010 Olympics gold medal game might compare. I think that the 1987 final game of the Canada Cup might compare, and I think the games of 1972, I think they're the best comparable because intermingled with this game was politics.
Oh yeah.
And that was a huge part of the 1972 series, Canada against
hmm
the evil empire, the USSR, the big red machine, our system against their system. And although I don't know like what the politics of the Canadian and US players are, but I think that the general animosity right now between the two countries is seeping into our blood.
hmm
And it whatever the players think, it's seeping into them. It's getting under their skin, the politics of the world today. We don't have to get into it, but it is getting into them, and it just took the game to a different level of intensity at the start. It felt like not a hockey game, but like a war.
hmm
Within the first 9 seconds, of course, as most people know by now, there was three fights. One fight as soon as the game started, and that was the main one. And I think that
They
was
were all pretty serious tilts, David. They
they
were all chucking them.
yeah.
Like there was
Those
no
guys were
holds barred. There wasn't much landing, but it wasn't because they weren't throwing. It wasn't like, Huggy Bear, Sax Tertini. These guys were just
they
firing
wanted to
bombs in the
hurt each
general
other.
directions. JT Miller punched himself, knocked his visor off and onto the ice. There's a great gif of that. That made me laugh. Of course, the
Uh,
fact that it was two Kachuks and Miller made it pretty easy to take a rooting interest in all three of the fights. But in the end, I, my wife was very angry and upset the way the game started. After the first fight, I said, "This isn't over. You realize there's going to at least be one more." And 1 second, 1 second later, they're back at it. I
I,
saw a game like this a few years ago. Was it maybe the I think of it as the John Tortorella game in Vancouver between the Flames and the Canucks, and they just had this wild brawl at the beginning. And I think it was sequential fights as opposed to just one, 10 man, everybody go at it all at once. But I could be wrong. Like Tortorella tried to get into the Flames dressing room between periods. It was a real bitter battle, and this one kind of reminded me like this, but obviously on way higher profile international stage under some pretty tense times, as you say, on our national flag day, no less, 60th year of the red maple leaf. And
I don't blame your wife, Bruce, for being upset. I think a lot of people would have found that upsetting.
mhm,
I found it a little bit disturbing, and I think it's the difference between sport and violence. And if you've ever witnessed violence firsthand, if you've ever like seen a really ugly fight, I was
mhm,
in a courtroom once where the defendant smuggled in a razor blade and attacked
oh,
his own lawyer. He was going to try to hostage his way out of the courtroom. He put the razor blade to the lawyer's neck and held him on the floor. So
wow,
I when I saw that, it was a jolt of adrenaline, and it was disturbing. And in this wasn't as bad as
I
that. It's
bet.
a hockey fight, but it was
No
disturbing
razor blades
because it was
involved.
no razor blades, although they got razors on their feet. But this was violence. Like this was extra than it was extra to hockey. It was something else. It was just those guys were really mad and really
Really
trying
amped
to
up.
hurt each other,
hmm
really amped up. and that was the face of violence, in a way that you don't often see in life. So yeah, if people were upset or disturbed by it, I get it, because I felt that same thing. And man,
Yeah,
that was no. That said, Bruce, those are two good things, two bad things, and two numbers podcast, and that is my good thing. That was an unforgettable
go for
moment
it.
in hockey history. Um, you know, um, the other comparable would be when the Czechs played the Russians, and there was a lot of animosity.
1969
Now,
at
and
Vienna.
68.
Well,
There was
60 there was the
two different
Prague
games.
Spring
Yeah.
after the 68 games, that and the first time they played was in 69 in Austria,
Yeah.
and the Czechs beat the Russians twice. It was a double
Yes.
round robin, and the Czechs beat the Russians, Czechoslovaks, I should say, not the Czechs. It was the two countries when they were still combined, Czechoslovakia. The Czechoslovaks beat the Russians 2-0, and then again 4-3. And I watched the latter game on CTV's Wide World of Sports. They showed it about 2 weeks after the game. You know how that show was always like
Wow.
huge lag, and they show some sporting event, a ski race or, barrel jumping or whatever from sometime in the recent past. Of course, it was direct knockoff, and basically they used the programming from ABC Wide World of Sport. And they showed this game because of its huge political interest. And I watched it in 1969 as a 13-year-old, and it was wild. I thought it was a game where it looked to me like the Czechoslovaks were prepared to pay any price in order to win.
Well, was that
And
after the
it
Russians had
was
moved, like
after the
an
Prague Spring,
actual
after
invasion, correct?
after the invasion
So,
of 19
we're
May of 1968 or June of
yeah,
1968.
we're being bullied right now, and no one likes it, and no one should like it. So we're really mad. Just imagine the
Yeah,
Czechoslovakians,
they
though,
got
an
invaded.
actual
They got
invasion,
invaded. Yeah,
physical tanks, soldiers moving in, and then there's a hockey
hmm
game. So
Jaromir Jagr wears number 68 to this day because of the Prague Spring that happened in 1968.
I wonder if that game's on the internet. I think I'd love to.
Yeah,
That is a moment of
it was
of
high intensity, that even over and above the 72 Canada Russia series, which is saying something because that got pretty crazy
oh
at times.
God.
But this was, I mean, it was like literal war between these
Well,
two teams in 68.
Game 8 of the Canada Russia series had the
Yeah.
same feel of being out of control, with with Alan Eagleson going on the ice, JP Parise
JP
threatening with his
Parise.
stick,
Yeah.
threatening the
Yeah.
referee to hack down the referee with his
The
stick.
equipment guy throwing the double bird to 15,000 people in the Luzhniki Sports Ice Palace was a pretty intense moment. And Pete Mahovlich coming out to save Alan Eagleson from a life in jail was another intense moment. It was pretty wild. Now, this game had none of that, and I'm thankful for that, because that was very close to going over the edge and losing it. And for you know, frankly, I have concerns on what's going on in our society right now. Over and above this hockey game, I was actually pretty calm about the hockey game, because it's just a hockey game in the grand scheme of things. And here's my theory, David. Canada and the United States are going to play twice, and they're going to split the game. So I'd rather lose the round robin game, which is now mission accomplished. So now when we get our split in Boston on Thursday, that'll be the right time to do it, right?
It looks like both those Czech games. Sorry, Bruce, I was just focused on something else.
Uh-huh.
It looks like both those Czech games are on
Both of them?
TV. Yeah,
Right on.
69,
Well,
game
and
one, and
somehow
3-4, one of the games. Oh,
and
maybe just
two
one of them
nothing.
is.
One was
Yeah.
2-0 and one was 4-3. The 4-3 game is the one I saw. That was the second game. And that set up the Czechoslovaks to win the gold medal until they lost the second time to Sweden. And all three, Sweden, Russia, Soviet Union, and Czechoslovakia, all wound up at 8-2, where each of them had beaten one of the others twice and lost to the other one twice, and all of them had beaten all the other teams, Canada, USA, and Finland, in the 16 tournament. And the damn Russians, Sweden beat Czechoslovakia 1-0 on the last day, and the Russians sneaked off with the gold, and not many people were
I will not
happy.
ask you how you remember all this. Okay. Bruce. So
Well,
that was
I
my.
read it earlier today on Wikipedia.
Oh, okay. That was my good
But
thing,
I
Bruce.
did know all the basic details that the Russians got the gold medal anyway, despite the Czechoslovaks beating them twice. That was really frustrating at the time. I was so upset when Sweden sneaked in that last game to win the silver, knocked the Czechoslovaks all the way down the pole to third.
Kevin Bieksa called that the greatest start to a hockey game ever. Tonight's game. So that was interesting. That was maybe a little overstatement, but
Uh, he would have played in that John Tortorella game against Calgary.
and I
I
love
think it was
Brandon Hagel.
Tortorella. I think it
Did
was
you
Mike
see
Keenan.
Brandon? Did you see Brandon Hagel between periods? They interviewed
Uh,
Brandon Hagel, who
oh
got
yeah, no, I did
in the
not.
fight with Kachuk,
I was reviewing grade A shots.
and Hagel said, "Yeah, like he said, he said he was asked about fighting Kachuk, and Hagel said he asked,
Oh,
and
it's clearly.
and he said he asked, and there was no way I was backing down from that guy." In
Yeah,
that tone of voice is what he said. So I love that.
yeah,
That was good.
yeah. Matthew picked his spots there.
Yeah.
Who would I rather fight out of all these guys? I'm going to go after that guy because he doesn't have much of a fighting history, I don't think. Hagel, I could be wrong. He's a real gamer, that guy.
So that was my good thing, Bruce. Any other thoughts about it? Any other comments on that start?
Well, that was it for almost the penalties for the game. The third one, the refs got smart, I thought, and they actually called an extra penalty so that instead of like rinse and repeat for several more face-offs, Canada, because they got a power play, they put out all their skilled players, and they dropped the puck and they started to play hockey, and they basically stuck to hockey for the rest of the game. Well, the first period in particular was highly physical. Man, there were some hard, heavy hits landed. McDavid got crushed twice by Charlie McAvoy,
Did he
and
ever?
yeah, and there was every time somebody went into the corner, bang, there'd be two bodies crushing into the boards, it was, and they couldn't keep it up for 60 minutes. I thought actually the last 40 were quite anticlimactic, to be honest.
They
And
were, weren't they? Canada didn't have a lot of energy.
juice after the first, I
No, they
don't
sure
know.
didn't. Yeah, it
I
was.
don't know.
Yeah, I think that adrenaline jolt everybody had kind of wore them out. Perhaps by the end of the game, I'll suggest. What's your good thing, Bruce?
Yeah, well, I got to go with the goal for Canada.
Yeah,
Briefly put our side on top, 1-0. 5:31 into the first period, and it was a superb goal, the best goal of the tournament so far, I would submit. Scored by none other than Connor McDavid. I guess you could argue the first goal in the last game was pretty darn good. The Crosby behind the
yeah,
back
all those
pass, but
passes, the three big
this
guys combining.
this
Yeah.
this one was quite the play, and it was the three big guys you expect on a passing play, right? Jordan Binnington to Drew Doughty to Connor McDavid, just like they drew it up. Probably not everybody would have had Jordan Binnington in their point scoring pool, but he did make a decent. Came out and made a decent field. He's a good puck handler. He made a decent feed to Doughty, and Doughty looked up and saw McDavid streaking up into the neutral zone, and Doughty made the perfect, what I would call Evan Bouchard pass to McDavid, hit him right on the tape at full steam, and McDavid went in on the poor defenseman who really didn't have a chance
It was
because,
McAvoy.
yeah, well, and he had another forward to worry about, and I think he might have hesitated for like a millisecond or so, and McDavid was around him. And McAvoy tried to cut him off from cutting into the middle on the deke, and Connor just took it to the backhand side and roofed it right under the crossbar on the otherwise unbeatable Connor Hellebuck. Just a sensational strike because the puck went probably from the time Binnington had it behind the Canada net to the time it hit the American net was 5 seconds, maybe. Just hockey at full streak, and it was just very stunning goal, and lifted every fan out of their seats, Center Bell was a joyous place there for a few minutes. It
It
was
was just such a
5 minutes
wonderful
and 44 seconds to be exact. Yeah, it was such a nice
shot. I was just going to focus on the Doughty's pass was fantastic,
4:44. Yes, it
but
was.
McDavid's backhand shot was so hard. Like he ripped a backhand
Hmm.
shot past Hellebuck. It was one of the hardest backhand shots you're going to see. Just ripped it over his shoulder.
Yeah.
Top shelf where mama keeps the cookies, as the legendary skills coach Jim Fleming likes to say. Bruce, yeah, great play. I wish we had had a few more of them. The U.S. really was like, I mean, just to slip in another good thing, and this isn't a good thing because it's a bad thing, but man, the U.S. played well defensively. They
Did they ever?
really did. That was a textbook defensive performance
Mhm.
in the third period, especially. I think Canada had like before the last dying seconds, they had like two grade A shots the whole period, and one of them was kind of marginal, a tip. McDavid had a decent
Good
shot from the
shot
high slot.
slot.
Morrissey made
Hmm.
a nice pass. But other than that,
Hmm.
Canada just, and this has got like
They couldn't break through.
Nathan McKinnon, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid, like lots of guys who can attack, but they just got nothing going. And um, well, I'll segue to my bad thing.
Sure.
I'm gonna, I think, listen, it's too early to walk around the battlefield and bayonet the wounded, but I'm gonna, I guess, engage a little bit of that. Like Canada could still win this. Put it that way. Canada
I just
can.
got
I
to
think
get a
that I
split.
regulation. They got to get a regulation win against Finland. I think,
Yes, absolutely.
and
I'm going to talk
and
about
if they
that a
do
bit.
that, they control their own destiny. I think if they win in regulation,
Yes. Yep.
that they are in.
Yep.
So um, what has to, this team could still come together. But Bruce, I never liked this team. You never liked this team selection, and there's a number of players, who should have been on this team. And of course, it doesn't help that Kel McCarr and Shea Theodore, who are probably the two best puck moving defensemen who are left on the team, them and Morrissey. McCarr was out sick, and Shea Theodore's hurt. So you get, Travis Sandheim shifting in. And, it doesn't also help, Bruce. And you made this point a number of times that Evan Bouchard wasn't picked for this team. And it's still a very controversial thing to say, even among Oiler fans who think
Yep.
he played his way off this team. He wasn't good enough. Listen,
Yep.
he was the best defenseman in the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs.
Hmm.
He is a brilliant passer of the
Yeah.
puck. In big games in the playoffs, he's shown that he can tighten it up defensively and get the job done. With Makar out, especially, him running the power play,
Yeah.
and McDavid, like he was trying to cycle the puck in the third period, and there's no Evan Bouchard at the point to pass it back to.
Hmm.
There's no one there who he can pass it back to who's either going to get a great shot or make a brilliant pass. There's, but it's not just they passed up on Logan Thompson. The hottest Canadian goalie, one of the best goalies in the league this year, and they brought in Bennington, who made some big saves. He made some big saves, but he also let in one weak goal and
Hmm.
one that you might like to have. It was a high slot shot, and I'm not he he played, but you just can't give up a cheap goal. You give up a cheap goal in a big game, your team usually loses, and he gave up a cheap goal to make it 1-1, and it
Oh,
changed the
that was
tone of the
huge. That
game.
changed everything.
Yeah. So Logan Thompson should be here. Mark Scheifele should be here. I mean, he's a this Zach Hyman needs to be on this team
Hmm.
again. Great player in the playoffs.
Hmm.
Um, Great regular season. He couldn't put the puck in that even though he was getting grade A shots, and because of that, he was held off the team, which is ridiculous. Tom Wilson, a big, aggressive forward. You saw what Adam Bennett did in this game. Tom
Tom
Wilson
Bennett.
should
Yeah.
be on this team. Tom Wilson
Hmm.
should have made it. So there's a number of players, Bruce, who I just can't figure out why they're not on this team. And I think that I thought it all along, and I still think it now. Now Canada has enough talent; they can still win this tournament,
Yep.
clearly. But
Gonna have to do
um,
it the hard way now.
yeah, I'm not, I just in the third period, their defensemen were struggling, Bruce, to move the
Mhm.
puck. They were struggling to get it out. They were struggling to make plays, and it's because they don't have like they're solid defensive players, but they don't have those really high end puck movers. Bouchard being one of them. Theodore injured and McCarr sick, and
Yeah.
those players were really missed tonight, and they would have made a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. Well, Tom Wilson, I mean, he's got 24 goals and 156 hits. You don't think he would have been a useful player in this game? You know, I
Yeah,
think he would have been boxed out around the crease.
yeah,
So, I mean, Sam Bennett, who does not have 24 goals, was one of the more effective Canadian forwards because he wasn't, taking any prisoners. He bowled over a pair of American defensemen with, I thought, clean, like they were right not to call penalties, but very aggressive and you know, marginally thuggish hits. And I thought they could have used a little more than that. Of course, part of the problem here, David, is this is Team November, right? They had to get the friggin' team selected by December 4th, wasn't it? Like well over 2 months ago. They had to name
why
the
didn't
entire team.
why couldn't they
And
have
what
introduced a
was that
month
all
ago?
about?
Yeah, but
Well,
what was that all about?
why couldn't they introduce six players when they announced the tournament like they did, and then do
Yeah,
another six in December, and then do another six, or even do the rest of the team, but a little deeper into the season than friggin' end of November.
yeah,
And anyway, and at the end of November, they went with, well, these Oilers made the Stanley Cup Finals. Obviously, that was a fluke because they were having a slow start. Well, guess what? None of their guys had a decent rest during the summer. But anyway, it's strange to me how this team got selected. And at the end of the broadcast tonight on ESPN, and it's weird. I watched the game on the Canadian network, but the recording I set up to review the grade A's, it just picked the lowest channel number to record, and it was ESPN. So it was Ray Ferrero and other buddy doing the play-by-play there. And Ray Ferrero, very, very good commenter, was saying,
excellent.
said that Canada is struggling to find the proper chemistry for Connor McDavid's line. Well, hello. I wrote already kind of two posts about this, and one last night talking about how McDavid hasn't played with any of these guys hardly ever in his life because he's the only Oiler on the team. He's only ever played for the Oilers. None of the other guys has ever played for the Oilers. So little dribs and drabs of international hockey. And there hasn't even been any of that for the last 7 years because the NHL pulled out of two Olympics and didn't bother to hold one World Cup. So McDavid is still kind of learning these guys, and they have, Evan Bouchard, who's the best player in the game for passing the puck to Connor McDavid. You want chemistry with McDavid? Put somebody he's familiar with on the team. Nope, that didn't happen.
Yeah,
And and of course it so happened that they lost two pretty offensive-minded defenseman, which is my bad thing, by the way, is the illness to McCarr. They really missed him in this game, and there
oh,
were
did they ever?
situations in this game where his ability to jump in and create like a fourth forward was desperately needed and wasn't there. And you can only hope that he'll be well enough to play Monday and Thursday and give the Americans a different problem to solve on Thursday. But he was sorely missed in this game. And unfortunately, there was no Evan Bouchard, as you say, to come in and help on the power play, which was ineffective. And they had, uh, and there's no Zach Hyman at the left post barging through the box out and getting a stick and body part on a hard pass to the post. There's none of that. So they were trying McDavid with different guys, and they put him on two or three different lines. I thought in the end, Point was about the best guy they could have put him
Yeah,
with, and they did,
yeah,
and that was worth a try. But it was pretty late by the time that happened. And anyway, it's strange. Like there's three Tampa guys on the team. There's two guys from Florida. There's all these teams, and you know how many players there are on this team that actually play hockey in Canada, 3 skaters and the third string goalie. 3 skaters out of the 7 Canadian teams, and then there's 5 out of the 2 Florida teams.
I'm going to just quickly go through the lineup, Bruce, and say who I think. I'm going to quickly go through the lineup and say who I think has made, like, based on this, who you'd think you'd want on the Olympic team for next year.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say Sidney Crosby,
Yep.
Devon Taves has
Yep.
been good. Josh Morrissey, Thomas Harley,
He was
played a
real
really
good
good game.
tonight, I thought.
He's a young defenseman. Like they kind of picked yesterday's team in a lot of ways. Like this is what I saw from these guys. This is what I see from the people picking this team. So Thomas Hardy, Morrissey, and Taves, McDavid, McKinnon, Braden Point, Mark Stone. That's it. So about half the players, and
That's
the
not
other
even
ones,
half.
yeah. So about half. It's. Let me just see if I've missed some of the names that should be here because I'm looking at a list that may be incomplete. But it's just not. It's not.
Oh.
It's not overwhelmingly obvious that they got the right team, Bruce, picked for this game. That's all. I guess I'll leave it at.
Yeah. Well, Sam Reinhart, who is a good player.
Yeah.
And they've had him with McDavid, and there's just not really been any kind of spark there. And in the last minute, when they had this, for the last 2 minutes, when they had 6-on-5, and McDavid was on the right side, and he passed it back to Morrissey, and it went back to McDavid, and it went back to Morrissey, and it went back to McDavid 2 or 3 times. And then McDavid fired a pass right on to, I'm sure it was Reinhardt, in the slot. And all he did was pass it back to McDavid.
Right back to McDavid. I
What
remember
the
the
hell are you
play.
doing, man? Shoot the friggin' puck.
He's a good
Holy.
player, Sam Reinhart, and I liked him in the first game just fine. But this game, man, he didn't have any shots, Bruce.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying the other players can't play their way onto Team Canada or have definitely played their way off, but there's lots of room for turnover on the Team Canada roster. Put it that way for the Olympic Games.
It's not like they've sealed their spots for next year. A few of these guys are on the cusp.
Well, and you know who else hasn't sealed? There's the people picking this team. I think we need a new group. Like if we don't win this tournament, you better get a new group of people picking this team. And
do the same thing you did with the juniors.
Yeah.
Turn over the selection committee.
Indeed. So we're at numbers, Bruce. My number is 28. 28 shifts for Drew Doughty, the most of any defenseman not named Josh Morrissey. They both had 28. So Drew Doughty had some good moments, but he is 35 now, and he has some bad moments as well. And I just think they reached into the past on this team a little bit much with Marchand and Doughty and Billington and some of the other players and Parayko, who have been better in the past than they are now. And 35-year-old Drew Doughty playing 28 minutes after being out for that long. I mean,
and he's the one guy they added where they could have added anyone. Who's the one guy that wasn't picked on December 4th? Doughty.
He had actually a much better game than previously, but I'm highlighting that because if you're relying on him essentially as your number one right side defenseman, that's maybe you didn't do as good a job as you could of picking right side defenseman is all I'm saying.
Meanwhile,
and I'm not I don't even know about Mackenzie Weegar. Like we didn't mention him, but people are really excited about how he's played this year.
There's a few guys that you could talk about. Meanwhile, Team USA missing Quinn Hughes, who's Norris Trophy winner Quinn Hughes, and all they've got on defense is Adam Fox, Zach Werenski, and young Brock Faber, who in this game had where are you, Faber?
25-19.
He had 25-19, 1 assist plus 3 in a 3-1 hockey game, 25 minutes. Guy from the all-rookie team last year. And the guy I hate to remind was selected with an Edmonton Oilers draft pick.
Ouch.
That the Oilers craftily traded away, plus another second-round pick in order to acquire Andreas Athanasiou in 2020. Played 9 games for the Oilers and walked. And the Kings got that pick, Faber, and they later traded Faber. They picked Faber, and then they traded him to Minnesota for Kevin Fiala. Like he was a known quantity by then. And Atu Ratti was the other guy.
So
Just one of those trades. Just one of the cautions of trading futures for now. You gotta go, go for it. Sometimes those futures turn out to be something. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm not saying the Oilers would have picked Brock Faber, probably not. But all I know is their pick got used to pick Brock Faber, who played 25 minutes tonight, plus 3 youngest defensemen on the team. I'm almost certain
30 shifts for Brock Faber, 31 for Slavin. So they're
they were the
playing,
pair.
the U.S. played players in the prime of their hockey career as their top pairing. And maybe if Theodore and McCarr, where they paired up, no, it was Taves and McCarr. Those two are in
Yeah,
the prime of their
yeah,
career.
yeah.
So you can't underestimate the loss of Cale McCarr. And Theodore's loss was huge too, because he's in his prime. And if you're just relying on players outside of their prime years, you're living in the past, I think, and it might work, but and I heard this
Yeah,
with
well,
Billington too. Well, he let in a weak goal, but he battled back. It's what we hear about Stu Skinner, and it's getting a little old, Bruce. That yes, he let in a weak goal, but he battled back. It's how you
yeah,
recover
yeah.
from the weak. No, you let in a weak goal as a professional
And you
goalie,
lose
your
two
team's
one.
probably going to lose, and it's not
No,
acceptable. You can't
no,
have
no.
goalies second game in a row, Billington's let in a weak goal, and the first game it might have been 2. So it's just like you can't have that, and it's not an excuse that he battled back. I don't. They should have tried Aiden Hill, and maybe I don't know. Is Hill injured or something? Is that why they don't go with him? They shouldn't have picked Sam Montembeault as the third string goalie. He has never been a good goalie in the NHL over a full season, and they picked him. And when they could have picked Logan Thompson, who was at that time the best goalie in the NHL and has maintained it since then. So I'm a
Yeah,
little bit
there may
frosty.
have been a hometown angle in the selection of Montembeault to, push the tournament locally there in Montreal. But anyway, it clearly, he's not even considered. He's strictly the number 3. Yeah, Brock
I know.
Faber is 22 years old and an NHL sophomore.
What's your number,
So
Bruce?
he's not even close to his prime. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you can be at 22. Doughty was in his prime at that age, like really good defensemen
Well,
are.
yeah, beginning of his long prime.
Kale
Eh?
McCarr was, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, what's your
My
number?
my number is 2. And that's the number of points that Canada, Sweden, and Finland all have after 2 rounds of games. USA, of course, is home cooled out with 6 points. They're going to finish first no matter what happens on Monday. And because of that, USA is fairly disincentivized from having to play their best against Sweden. Whereas if Sweden has any chance uh, to qualify for the final, they're going to bring their A+ game, and very good chance they would beat Team USA on Monday, even in Boston,
Yes, I agree.
under the circumstances. Now, the way to put a stop to that is for Canada to beat Finland in regulation on Monday afternoon. They play first.
Yeah,
And if Canada beats Finland, that gives them 5 points. All Sweden can do is tie Canada with a regulation win over Americans, and then it
and
goes to the
Canada wins the
tiebreaker, and
tiebreaker.
Canada gets it because they beat Sweden. They got that big overtime goal against Sweden, and the Swedes, if they'd won in overtime today, they'd be kind of in the catbird seat right now. But guess what? They lost in OT a second time, this time to Finland. Bit of a shocker,
Yeah,
but it's never that surprising when those two rivals meet up. Finland has delivered some crushing defeats to Sweden over the years, several of them in Stockholm, which of course this wasn't. So Canada has to take care of business on Monday against Finland. Now you'd like to think they should be favored to win that game, but it won't be easy because Finland, you know, fin- they got beat 6-1 by USA, but it was like 1-1 very late in the second period, and then couple of weird ones went in, and the route was on. But today they fought back hard, and they got lots of pride in the finish room. Always have had. Little hockey nation that could. So it won't be an easy game. You'd like to think Canada's favored, and if they win it in regulation, it's only that will. I mean, they could win in overtime and then get help. But boy, I wouldn't count on that help. I mean, if you're Team USA and you think, well, if we lose to Sweden, we got Sweden in the final, and if we beat them, we're going to have to play Canada again. I mean, like I say, it's pretty big disincentive for them, and I just don't trust them.
No, they gotta
So I
win.
want, yeah, I just want Canada to beat them, and if they do, then they have a rematch where they'll be the road team, in every sense. In terms, they'll have finished second, so they won't get the last change, and they'll be playing in Boston, and they'll be the underdogs. But hopefully, they'll have McCarr by then, and maybe they're going to have their true number one goalie, whoever that is, and maybe they'll just play a little bit better of a game and get her done. So that's one of my number two. Here's the other. This is a shocking number two for me tonight. Connor McDavid was on the ice tonight at even strength, 5-on-5, 20 minutes and 12 seconds that he was on the ice. And during that time, Canada mustered 2 shots on net, 4 against. It was such a tight checking game, and the Americans really concentrated on just clogging everything up. McDavid got both of those shots himself, the goal, of course, and that shot from the slot midway in the third that we referenced earlier. But that was the only 2 shots Canada got. 20 minutes of 5-on-5 with Canada's top player on the ice. So they were, it speaks to the, I think, the strength of the American defense. It wasn't Hellebuck that was beating that line. It was, they just weren't able to beat the last line of defense. I remember there was one time where a Canadian kind of got free down the wing, and the announcers were saying it was, they got, there was a little bit of space, and by the time Buddy got to the end of the ice, he was all the way in the corner with 2 defensemen smearing him into the board. That was 1 against 2, and they were thinking that was open ice. There just wasn't any. And I mean, I got to tip my hat to Mike Sullivan and crew, and to obviously the players who executed, because they just shut this game down. And in many ways, I hate to bring this up, but it reminded me of Game 7 of Stanley Cup Finals against Florida. As soon as I got that 2-1 lead, I had this dread feeling that that could be it. And it was then, and it was again tonight.
You did, I didn't. I thought there was Canada was going to win it, but
I did briefly when it was 1-0. I thought, oh, here we go. And then I got that sleazy one to tie it, and then next goal was going to be big, big, big. The way the game was, the chances were just few and far between, and the shots, what were they in the end? 25 to 26 to 23. I can't even read anymore.
The grade A shots were.
There were several in the last minute after it was 3-1. So it was like 2020, well deep into the third period.
Grade A shots were 15 to 14 for Team USA. The 5 alarm shots were 6-5 for Team USA. So.
Okay.
All right, Bruce, let's leave it there, and we will reconvene on
could play that game
Monday.
Again, and the other team could win, and hopefully that's what's going to happen on Thursday. Like I say, my master plan is you split the 2 games, you just win the right one.
Yeah. Good master plan, Bruce.
I hope they follow it.
Brilliant. I like it. I like it a lot. I like it. All right, Bruce, thanks for talking tonight.
All right, thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast. Did you have a final thought there? Okay.
No, just hang in there. It's tough times, man. This is very trying.
It is a discombobulated moment in Canadian history. All right. Thanks again, Bruce. Good night, everybody.